Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Oh my, it's so wonderful to be here. I am Velva Taylor Spriggs, and I am the great aunt to Kenzie. So when I joined the Peace Corps after leaving college, I was selected to go to Costa Rica. And let me tell you a little bit about that. And of course, when you go into the Peace Corps, you go as a volunteer. You have to apply to go in, and that you have to take a test. Not everyone is selected. First of all, because Costa Rica is a Spanish-speaking country, so I had to study Spanish for 5 hours a day. And that was after running 3 miles a day, because the point was to build my strength for this service. So I had to be up. I was training for 4 whole months to prepare me to work in Costa Rica for 2 years. And finally, after going through all of that, we then had to live, because the training was occurring in Puerto Rico, we had to live with Puerto Rican families, so that we could figure out how we felt about being in another culture. Okay? And many of us are from other countries and other cultures, and we know that sometimes means that that's not easy to live what you're used to doing, and then going someplace where people are living in a very different way. Well, after that, about 50 of us went to Costa Rica to our various jobs. The country has to invite you. You can't just show up. And so my job in Costa Rica was to teach English to elementary school children, to teach French to high school students, which I found very challenging because I had to teach French in Spanish. I found that very challenging. And then I worked in a nutrition center for little children. That was a health project. There were people who worked in agricultural projects, economic development, community development. We had all kinds of projects. We stayed for 2 years, and we were not permitted to go home. Today in the Peace Corps, they no longer do the kind of training that I went through, but they do the language training, they do the cross-cultural training. And they also live with families of the culture of the countries where they're going to be living. And that's very, very important. But what is so wonderful is that you learn how to live the way other people live, and to begin to develop relationships, develop new friends, learn a new language, engage in different activities. Peace Corps is a U.S. government agency. And so as a U.S. government agency, the Peace Corps pays for you to get trained. It pays for you to travel to that country, and they give you a monthly stipend to live in the country. And while they're giving you the monthly stipend, they're saving money for you, so that when you come out of the Peace Corps, they hand you a check of a lump sum of money of a few $1,000s to help you to continue your life at home. You do not have to have a college degree, but you do have to have a skill. You have to have interest, and you have to have some enthusiasm. And most of all, you have to have a respect for yourself and others. And let me say to you that you're living at a time of tremendous opportunity, and Peace Corps simply represents one possible opportunity for you to stretch your wings, to learn something new, to broaden your life experience, and get connected with another group of people who are very much like you. but may speak a different language, may clothe themselves in a different way, but who have feelings and customs, who are caring and loving, who are just like you. And tell you a little bit about the Civil Rights Movement. When would you say the Civil Rights Movement officially began? What was the Civil Rights Movement? Let me ask that. It's when people started really demanding their rights. And it really started with African Americans, and it then spread to other people in the country, right? Women started demanding their rights. You've heard of women's lib? All right. Gay people started demanding their rights. Okay. Elderly people started demanding their rights. Gray power. People with disabilities started demanding their rights. So it was a wonderful movement that really ushered in a period of time in which people began to say, we are human and we have rights. We have a right to be here, and we have a right to have what all Americans have in terms of just being able to have a decent life, a decent place to live, a decent education, and all of those things that help to enrich one's life. So in 1954, there was a decision by the Supreme Court that schools should be integrated. And that really, there had been many struggles prior to that time, but in terms of having the country put a legal stamp on the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement, 1954 was a key year when Thurgood Marshall went to the Supreme Court and fought for the integration of American schools, because prior to that time, we lived in a segregated society. Yes, everything was separated, right? And I am old enough to remember that. I remember when there were separate bathrooms, separate for whites from colored. You all heard that term before?
Yeah.
Yes, yes. When everything was separate. Black children could not go to the same school as white children. American Indian children could not go to the same schools. Mexican American children could not go to the same schools. Everything was separate. So here you are, the manifestation of the fruits of our labor to integrate the society and make things fairer for everyone. My story in the Civil Rights Movement. When I was in college in my junior year, which means that I was about 20 years old, and I am now 80 years old. I want you to know that. When I was about 20 years old, I attended Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland. Baltimore, Maryland was a segregated city. There was a movie theater near the campus of the school that I attended, which did not allow blacks to go to that movie theater. The students were very upset about that and decided that we should do something about it. At that time, there were a lot of movements going on throughout the United States in organizations like SNCC. Have you ever heard of SNCC? The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, made up of young people who were fighting for civil rights. Another organization, CORE, Congress of Racial Equality, also renowned for fighting for civil rights. And so we were not alone in our concern, but we decided to pick up the mantle and fight this fight. And so we decided in my university, many of us to go on a march. And we went to the theater, and in front of the theater, we just marched around the theater all day and all night. Eventually, the police came, and they threw us into police paddy wagons and took us down to the police station and fingerprinted us, and then they took us to the Baltimore City Jail, where we stayed for a week. It was not unusual for people in the civil rights movement to go to jail, but we were determined to stay in jail until they integrated that movie theater. Guess who won? We won. Of course, once we came out, there was tremendous celebration. The students from Goucher College, who were white female students, came and joined us in the jail. And we sang the civil rights songs. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome one day. And I do think that you are the evidence of that we have overcome a lot and are continuing to overcome. And that's just my story of my contribution to the civil rights movement. But there were many, many people throughout the country who did many things to make sure that we can live a more equitable life, a fairer life in the United States of America. Oh, what made me as a person think about doing what I did in civil rights? Well, I guess it was my sense of indignation and my sense that what was happening was wrong. And I was presented with an opportunity to try to do something about it without knowing that this would work. We didn't know that it would work. We didn't know how long we would have to be in jail. We didn't know. But I was so motivated by the situation. And I think by the fact that there were other students who were also very willing to do this, so I felt supported. Oh, my parents were quite upset about this. Not everybody supported what we did. It was very frightening. It was very scary. And so some of the parents came to the jail to get their children. But I had lived in Philadelphia. That's where my parents were, and the school was in Baltimore, so my parents didn't come. But they made phone calls, and they decided, based upon the kind of person they knew that I was, they decided to just kind of let me see it through. But it was scary to the parents. It really was. People who lived around the university, and it was largely a white community at that time, they came out of their houses and brought us hot chocolate and coffee. So they were supporting us, which made us feel wonderful. I think that it's a continuing struggle. I think that we were fighting racial issues at that time, but as I said earlier, that fight became expanded to include other groups and their issues. I think that today in America, we are facing some major changes again. People around the world observe what we do because we are a very visible country. We are a very powerful country, and our presence is everywhere.